have you ever had that moment? To which Daphne Brooks replied, whenever I see Lee Greenwood singing Proud to be an American.
I believe that represents the individual we interviewed on air, not the position.
And did you say there's no bias on NPR?
That is not a position
That is
of
not a
NPR.
biased statement, ma'am. That is not even both parties wrap themselves around this song every time there's a national conflict. Lee Greenwood sings it, and he does a beautiful job, but you say there is no bias in NPR.
That is that individual's opinion, and she, of course, is entitled to it, but that is not the position of NPR.
Ma'am, you said in your opening statement that you were going to be transformative, and I believe you failed to do that. Let me ask you, why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath in 2020?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hot News Today, where we cut through the noise, break down what really happened, and call it exactly the way we see it. So listen, the moment I saw this hearing clip with Congressman Tim Burchett, I knew we had to talk about it. Burchett came in with receipts, direct questions, and zero patience for the usual scripted answers. And honestly, this is what accountability looks like. This is the type of energy Americans wish they saw more often, someone who isn't afraid to say, no, answer the question. For real. This hearing exposed a lot. The confusion, the contradictions, the excuses, and Tim Burchett didn't let a single one slide. Whether it was about biased commentary, taxpayer money, or wild contradictions on funding, Burchett asked the questions that millions of Americans have been wanting answered for years. And trust me, after watching the full thing, I've got thoughts. A lot of thoughts. Before we get into the full breakdown, do me a favor. Smash that like button. Hit subscribe. And turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily breakdowns here on Hot News Today. All right, let's get into it.
Ms. Carter, is it true that HBO bought the rights to Sesame Street?
No, it did not. It developed Sesame Street entered an arrangement with HBO for a number of years.
And it was a paid arrangement, correct?
Yes, which allowed us to get the series for free during the period of that time.
How much money was transacted during that?
I don't know. Sesame Street is a private organization. It is separate from ours.
Okay. Ms. Meyer, what about Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA as propaganda?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat the question?
What about Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA is propaganda?
I don't believe that is propaganda, sir.
Okay, well, in January, North County Public Radio, and that's a subsidiary of NPR, had Daphne Brooks, who apparently is a black feminism scholar, on its show where it was hosted by the host Brittany Lewis, and it says, have you ever watched something on TV and thought, okay, now this is propaganda? Have you ever had that moment? To which Daphne Brooks replied, whenever I see Lee Greenwood singing Proud to be an American.
I believe that represents the individual we interviewed on air, not the position.
And did you say there's no bias on NPR?
That is not a position
That is
of
not a
NPR.
biased statement, ma'am. That is not even both parties wrap themselves around this song every time there's a national conflict. Lee Greenwood sings it, and he does a beautiful job, but you say there is no bias in NPR.
That is that individual's opinion, and she, of course, is entitled to it, but that is not the position of NPR.
Ma'am, you said in your opening statement that you were going to be transformative, and I believe you failed to do that. Let me ask you, why did you call President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath in 2020?
Congressman, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I regret those tweets. I would not tweet them again today. They represented a time where I was reflecting on something that I believe that the president had said rather than who he is. I don't presume that anyone is a racist.
You don't believe anyone is a racist?
I don't start by presuming anyone is a racist, sir.
Okay. Has NPR or PBS ever conducted an internal review to assess whether conservative or right-leaning perspectives are fairly representative news and programming?
Congressman, what we look at is the distribution of people who listen to our work, and we can tell you, and I'm proud to tell you, that for our digital, our podcasts and our website, the distribution of Americans who come to NPR does reflect the political distribution of the nation. In fact, the distribution on our websites, 33% of folks who come are conservative versus 28% who are liberal, and the rest identify as independent. So the largest group is conservatives who come to NPR's websites.
So you believe that most Americans think President Trump is a fascist and a deranged racist sociopath?
I don't believe that at all, sir.
Okay. Ma'am?
We obviously are constantly looking at the voices that we bring forward. We take to heart our commitment to bringing forward perspectives from across the country. Our programming comes from our local stations. And I mentioned in my opening comment the series that we did out of Arkansas, Southern Storytellers. That's just one little example. 10% of our schedule is news. The rest of it is either children's programming or programming based on history to give us all a collective expression. And we're constantly looking to making sure that we're bringing forward a diversity of viewpoints and perspectives and experiences that really do make up the fabric of this country.
Okay. NPR senior editor Leonard, it's been mentioned before, but he was quoted as saying an open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR, and now, predictably, we don't have an audience that reflects America. Yet you stated that the audience does reflect America. He was suspended without pay for 5 days for saying this, and of course he eventually resigned in April 2024. You've also stated that federal funding is essential for NPR to operate, but also claim only 1% of your funding comes from the federal government. Which is it?
Mr. Berliner was suspended for the outside work policy, not for what he said, sir. In terms of federal funding, the federal funds go to support our operation of the public radio satellite system, which enables all of our local stations to be able to communicate information and broadcast, including...
As stated earlier, ma'am, funding is very fungible. It flows wherever it needs to. I don't buy that argument.
We do have
I
a
wonder
separate
if any of the
balance sheet
members
for that,
of the
sir.
committee would comment real quickly. Would you agree that Real America's Voice, Newsmax, Fox, or News Nation, if they were to see federal funds, would you all support that? Yes or no? Mr. Ullman, yes or no?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Ma'am?
I actually don't have an opinion about that.
Ma'am?
I don't have an opinion about that, sir. That would be Congress's decision.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
Okay, now that we've watched the full exchange, let's talk about what we just saw, because that was a clinic in exposing double standards, mixed messaging, and selective accountability. Tim Burchett came to get real answers, and the moment the questions started landing, you could see the tension rise instantly. 1. The Sesame Street confusion? Burchett caught it immediately. Asterisk asterisk. All he did was ask a straightforward question. Did HBO buy the rights, or was it an arrangement? And suddenly we got the classic, well, technically, it was an arrangement. If this was supposed to be clarity, it wasn't. Burchett's point was simple. Be honest and precise when taxpayer-connected entities are involved. And he was absolutely right to push for that clarity. 2. The God bless the USA moment was wild. Burchett asked whether Lee Greenwood's song, a patriotic anthem loved across the country, was propaganda. The NPR representative said no. Then Burchett brought receipts. NPR-associated programming had a guest calling it propaganda on air. Burchett wasn't asking for censorship. He was asking, why does NPR allow highly skewed takes while claiming they have no bias? And let's be honest, that was a fair question. Burchett exposed a major contradiction right there. 3. The Trump tweet confrontation was the biggest moment. When Burchett read back the NPR CEO's own tweets calling President Trump a fascist, deranged, racist sociopath, you could feel the entire hearing shift. These weren't small comments. These were extreme political labels coming from someone running an organization that claims neutrality. Burchett confronted it head-on. No sugarcoating. No dancing around it. And the response? I regret those tweets today. Burchett's face said everything we were all thinking. If the leader says things this biased, how can the organization claim zero bias? Great question, and still unanswered. 4. Audience distribution. Burchett wasn't buying that either. Asterisk asterisk. The NPR rep tried to say, well, actually, most of our website visitors are conservative. Tim Burchett called it out for what it was, a diversion. Audience demographics don't erase biased statements, skewed commentary, or one-sided narratives. Burchett's whole message: representation in your audience is not the same as balance in your content. Exactly. 5. The internal criticism? Burchett dropped another bomb. He brought up the senior NPR editor who said there was no more open-minded spirit at NPR. That NPR no longer reflected the country. That there was ideological filtering happening internally. And what did Burchett get back? He was suspended for outside work policy. Sure. Totally coincidental timing, right? Burchett saw right through that, and so did we. 6. The federal funding contradiction was Burchett's knockout punch. NPR leadership claims, "We need federal funding," but also says, "It's only 1% of our budget." Burchett called out what millions think. If it's only 1%, then you don't need it, unless it's serving a purpose you're not admitting. And when he asked whether conservatives would support federal funding for outlets like Fox, Real America's Voice, or Newsmax, crickets. Dodging. No clear yes. No fairness. Just discomfort. Which proved Burchett's point again. Final thoughts. Tim Burchett did exactly what an oversight hearing is supposed to do: cut through the polished talking points and expose the inconsistencies. He didn't yell. He didn't get emotional. He didn't grandstand. He just asked the hardest questions and refused to let them hide behind vague language. This is accountability. This is transparency. This is what taxpayers deserve. And honestly, more members of Congress should take notes, because Burchett showed how it's done.